We
Welcome to
do.
another episode of Recovery Authors. Today I am with a very special guest who has, this is not a drug story, this is more of a recovery story. This fellow has authored an incredible recovery from basically from suicidal thoughts. Your story would be worth capturing, Devin Ford, even if you hadn't had the trials that you did in recent months, but that's why you're here, man. I just wanted to capture this story. I think it's a magnificent, inspirational, redemptive story. And if you would, go ahead and take a second and kind of introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. And I hope people can get, something beneficial from this. But
Welcome.
my name is
We're
Devin Ford. I am the owner of Performance Fuel Nutrition. So I have a whole, remote nutrition coaching business. I've been in CrossFit for over a decade. I own a CrossFit gym. It's pretty much been my entire life. So now I'm more into strongman, but that's pretty much sums up really quickly who I am.
Cool. We'll have lots of opportunity to come back to where you are current day. But for the listener, would you just quickly kind of explain what is CrossFit? Maybe there's some people out there that have been under a rock and don't know what this is.
Yeah, CrossFit is basically, well, first, CrossFit is, sport and conditioning or strength and conditioning program, but the actual sport of CrossFit, because there are a lot of CrossFits out there and a lot of people do CrossFit, but the sport is a little bit different from that. The sport of CrossFit is more about crowning the fittest men and women in the world. So they run them through a barrage of different tests, from monostructural movements like running, swimming, like pure endurance work, to gymnastics works, to pure strength work, to strongman, and everything in between. So it's kind of a barrage of tests to figure out who is the fittest person in the world. And that's pretty much the sole purpose of the CrossFit Games, which is like the big international CrossFit competition. So it's a little bit of everything.
So yeah, this is an important distinction because CrossFit, my limited understanding is kind of a stopgap or maybe a departure from the previous strongmen of the world concept, like a Mr. Olympia or Mr. Something like that, where Arnold Schwarzenegger was dominant.
Absolutely. Where bodybuilding or physique competitions are more about how you look, CrossFit was always much more about how you perform. And, people got into it because, people who were competing in CrossFit always looked great. So people wanted to be like them, which is why they would kind of start doing CrossFit. But the CrossFit itself, the sport, was all about, originally CrossFit was formed way back in the day, like when I started, mainly as a functional fitness program for people who needed it, people who needed to be fit to survive, like firefighters, cop, military. These were the guys that founded CrossFit and kind of did CrossFit and were the originals of CrossFit. So the sport kind of evolved from that. The sport is like, let's see, how fast you are, but also how strong you are, how much you can do this and that. And there's no weight class, there's no age class. It's everybody, does the same thing and is kind of tested the same way. So whoever is the fittest kind of rises to the top. So it's definitely a much different sport from what was there previous to CrossFit.
Posing and yeah.
Yeah, none of that stuff. Not quite.
All right. So in a very strong sense, so in a sense, the CrossFit could be considered like really the strongest man in the world.
Kind of. So the strongest man in the world is more like strongman. And that's actually ironically what I'm doing now. So I'll get into that. But the fittest man in the world is CrossFit. So where the strongest man in the world, they're more lifting heavy shit. And there is endurance elements to that, but it's mainly short-lived endurance, like a minute or two at most. CrossFit's much more like they do, a marathon could be one of their events, and then the next event could be like a max deadlift. So they're not as strong as the strongmen, and they're not as enduring as endurance athletes, but they can do everything pretty well, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. And then there's kind of a level or two, right, according to weight class?
Yeah, well, so for CrossFit, there's actually no weight class at all. There are age classes. So there's like a master's division, which starts at like 35, I believe. But other than that, everybody's in the same game. Where in strongman and like powerlifting, there's all weight classes. But in CrossFit, there's no weight class at all because they're trying to find who the fittest human being is, regardless of their height, weight, or whatnot.
Okay, cool.
So,
So you decided a decade ago that you wanted to be in this competition.
yeah, so I started CrossFit, I think over a decade ago now, probably like 11, 12 years ago. And at that time, CrossFit was just beginning. Like it really wasn't even a big sport. The sport didn't even begin yet. It was still just kind of a more underground fitness cult, so to speak, back in the day. And what originally caught my eye with it was just because it wasn't like your typical workout that you go into the gym and do. It was always for time, and you were always ranked on what you did. So it was naturally competitive just to do. But then once it evolved into a sport, I was coming from doing martial arts for since I was 4 up until when I started this, and I always was super competitive, but I struggled to find the place to be competitive in. And when I found CrossFit, that's when like the light went off, and I was like, this could be the thing that I could be great at. You know what I mean? Like this could be the fucking thing.
Right.
And, it was never good enough for me just to do something and be okay at it. Like if I was going to do something, it was going to be because I was going to win. Like I was going to be the best in the world at it. Otherwise, I really didn't see a point to doing it. So with CrossFit, I was pretty good just starting it. Like I started pretty damn good, and I was like the best one in the gym just starting it. And then as that competition grew and there was more and more competitions out there, that's when I just took off with it. I saw that as my way to that path of greatness, so to speak.
Now, for most people, I can think of, let's call him an average CrossFitter. My brother up in Rochester, he's what I would consider an average CrossFitter. I know he loves the competitive element of it, but I think he's competing more with the people in his gym,
right,
or on that smaller level. You, on the other hand, you've got kind of a special entry point into this because of your career. Isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I well, from a bunch of different reasons, really, but at that time, I think the biggest thing about when I started CrossFit, which is so different, because CrossFit now is massive, like it's everywhere. But when I started, nobody knew what CrossFit was. So when I was doing CrossFit, like I would tell people, hey, I'm doing this thing called CrossFit. Nobody knew what the fuck that was. Like everyone's like, what the hell is that? Like, at the time it was like a running joke that it was almost like Fight Club, right? It's like the first rule of, CrossFit, you don't talk about CrossFit because nobody really knew what the hell it was. And anytime you mentioned CrossFit, you had to like go through like a 5-minute explanation of what it is. And we didn't even know what the fuck it was because it was everything. So we couldn't even describe the thing. So what's interesting is that when I started CrossFit, it really wasn't even a thing. It wasn't CrossFit. It was just kind of a place people went and threw down, and as I evolved with the sport, so I kind of, as the sport grew and became more and more and more popular, I grew up kind of with that. And now, they're two distinct things, but back then they weren't.
So basically, let me give you a summary for the listener. So this thing started out as kind of this underground thing where people are doing a different series of exercises. They're doing like swinging pull-ups and push-ups and maybe running a little bit, but it's kind of like a series of Olympic events kind of compressed together in one workout. So for the average person, they come in for an hour and you go through all these things, and you try to get more and more and more within each set exercise, right?
Yes.
You're racing against yourself, but you're racing against everybody else in the gym that's doing it with you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a great way to get a workout, because for me, the biggest problem is always doing the workout. But if it's more like a game, it's like the gamification of exercise.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So So you caught on to this game, you grew with the sport, and as it evolved, it kind of separated and morphed into two different entities. One is where my brother and all the people that are listening probably will relate to,
Right.
going to the gym and having fun playing this game and getting exercise. And then what you did as a gym owner, isn't that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you're able to take it a little bit to the next level, right?
Yes.
And how does it work in terms of like I'm sure there's different levels like regional, maybe
Yes.
wide or something like that.
Yep. So the way, and this actually kind of runs into the whole shit show that happened, but basically the way that it always was for a long time was there was an open. So this was done actually online, and the open had, I think the last open had like 300,000 plus people that signed up for it. And it's one workout that's done per week, and you do this in a CrossFit gym through, the certified coaches who also signed up for the open, and they know how to judge the workouts and whatnot, and they watch you do it, and then you can submit your score, blah, blah, blah. And then out of the open, there's usually, or there was, like the top 20 for each region. So for instance, in the Northeast, you had to be in the top 20 out of, I don't even know. I want to say there was like at least 10,000, maybe even fucking 20,000, 50,000. I don't remember, but in the Northeast, and you had to be in the top 20.
Okay.
And only those top 20 went to regionals.
So there's how many regions across the U.S.?
Man, I don't even know. There was probably like 10 or so. They kind of changed the format now, but around then.
There's a ton of people that are involved in this.
Yeah.
And
shit ton.
Your region, a shit ton. Let me use the proper technical term.
Yeah, exactly.
So from your region, you're up in New York, on Long Island there. I saw you there talking a minute ago.
Yep.
Feel it. I'm from Buffalo. My family's up in York, Maine. So.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
But your region has, let's say, what, 50 grand, 50,000 people?
Somewhere in there. I don't even know. It's a lot.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
And at some point, you started looking at those numbers and saying, where do I rank? Because you're really competitive, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where did you fit in that group?
Well, at first, not too great. First year or two. And that was when I was, still kind of tinkering, flirting with it, so to speak. And then I really dived in. And that's when, shit really took its own course. And this is where I eventually opened up my own gym, and mainly literally just so that I could train. Like I wasn't even opening the gym for a business reason. I opened the gym so I had a place to fucking train 24/7.
Wait a minute. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, that's 100% truth.
So this is how you do things. When you dive into something, you just move heaven and earth, and you focus in on
Absolutely.
that and go take things to an absurd, ridiculous level.
Absolutely. 100%. Because to me, when I found, like, especially as it evolved and I got better and better and started ranking higher and higher and was getting to regionals every year, like this wasn't something to do for fun. Like this was me proving my fucking worth to myself. Like if I didn't win, I was garbage basically. So I would do anything that I could to make sure that I was going to win, and opening a gym was essential.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one little piece of the puzzle. And we're going to come back to this, but I noticed you said you'll do anything to win.
Yes.
Now I want to take you back to the first time that you ranked for something and that you felt like maybe this was something you could do. What happened? Because you said you were at the very bottom the first year or two.
Yes.
Right? When did you get your first inclination that this could be something you might be incredible at?
That's a really good question. I would say it was probably the second or third time I got to regionals.
Okay.
The first time I got to regionals, I didn't do well. I came in like near bottom, but I also wasn't at that point training for a sport. I was kind of doing CrossFit still for fun. I was competitive with myself in the gym and things like that, but I didn't see it as a career, so to speak.
Okay.
because the sport itself wasn't really even developed at that point. It was still in the very early stages.
But the first time you got to regionals, was this the first time you traveled and went to meet other CrossFitters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you still had to probably feel pretty good about accomplishing that.
Yeah, I felt good about like, being there and kind of competing against the best guys. And I was like, oh shit, like look at these guys, like I'd never seen them before and they were amazing.
So
Um,
when were most of these other guys, was it everyone's first time at that region? Like, did you go to the first regionals or was
yes, I did.
okay?
Yeah, this was the very first regional. So this was yeah, this was it, man. This was the first time anybody's been there.
How many days event was that?
I think 3 days. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it was 3 days.
Okay, so for the very first time in history, all you guys, the top CrossFitters in your area,
Yeah.
being in a gym. Where was the gym at?
It was actually in a parking lot of a gym with like the caution tape
Humble
around
beginning.
the
All right, all right.
Yep.
So you guys met in a parking lot, and you basically sweat a bunch together, right?
Exactly. We worked out really hard. Yeah.
How many people were you competing against?
I think there was 50.
Okay, so you're the top 50 people in your place in your area.
Yes.
So from the very first time, you were one of the elite.
Yeah. The bottom of the elite, but I was one of the elite.
All right. Well, I mean, you keep referring to that, so obviously that was something in your mind leading
Oh
to
yeah.
that event, right? And
Yes.
then you were knowing that you were going to hopefully get back there with the same fellas again the following year, right?
Yep.
So what did you do between the first and the second one?
I started actually training like an athlete. I went from kind of just going into the CrossFit gym and just doing whatever workout was posted for the day. I went from that to actually going in and doing what I needed to do. Like looking at my strengths, my weaknesses, what I needed to improve, and actually designing the program to get better as an athlete, looking at this as a sport rather than just kind of going to the gym and working out and then doing a competition, which sounds crazy now that like you would even do that. But back then, it wasn't really known as a sport yet. So nobody was really programming like that. Everybody just kind of went in and did a CrossFit workout and then kind of competed, so that was the shift that really turned this from hobby to obsession.
Obsession. That's an interesting word. And I know
Yeah.
you didn't use passion, you used obsession.
Yeah.
Does
This was pure obsession.
does it have a kind of an unhealthy connotation for you?
Um, yes. And that was a big piece of why everything that I went through at the end, so to speak, was so fucked up in so many ways because of everything that I went through to get there.
We'll get there, but not quite yet. So
Yeah, we're getting there. We're creeping.
we're creeping. Yeah, I want to kind of build this up. This is a pretty incredible fall, but I got to get you at the right altitude so that people
Right.
hear.
Yeah, I get it.
Man, so first year, second year, what year was it that you had your fall? How many years in was this?
You mean the big fall, right?
Yeah.
A decade later.
Okay, so you did this for 10 years
10
consecutively.
years. Yeah.
All right. Was there any notable marks along the way where things big things shifted as you're approaching that 10th year?
Yeah, you know what? It was kind of a weird little loop, but basically since that second year, I just kept climbing. Like I got better and better and better and ranked higher and higher. And that was while the sport was getting more and more competitive too. Like every year, the athletes in the sport were like doubling, So a lot of the guys who started competitive fell off after like a few years because, you had more and more, pro athletes coming into CrossFit now, and just the programming was getting much more intense. You had a lot more guys who, because it was becoming more mainstream, you had a lot more genetic freaks out there who were kind of getting in there. So I kept going and climbing and climbing. And then probably like 4 or 5 years into it, I hit a little bit of a drop where it was only 2 years in the 10 years that I did CrossFit that I didn't make regionals. And I kind of got hit those 2 years. Not because I got any worse. I was personally still getting better and better. It was just the events plus, the athletes themselves were getting so higher level that it was very hard to maintain that. But then right after that little dip of those 2 years I didn't make it was my rise of doing the best that I ever did. And that was the shift.
Let me stop you there then. So
Yeah.
you missed it after 5
Mhm.
years, and then you missed it again. That's 2 years off. Did you feel like quitting?
No, I felt like I never felt like quitting. I felt like a failure for sure. I felt like I was just not doing enough. You know, I took it like you're fucking around too much. Like you should be there, and if you're not, you fucked up. Like you didn't do something that you should have done. So I doubled down on everything. You know, rather than kind of quitting, it was like, no, now I need to. You know, if I'm training once a day, now I'm training twice a day for
Really?
the next year. Yeah, and that's what I did for years after.
All right. So the real rise was from after those 2 years of missing
hmm
up until when you had your main story, which we'll get to shortly.
Yes, that was, yeah, I went from, you know, one of the regional guys, so to speak, to one of the best in the world in that time period that followed that decline.
Wow. So where did you rank in that? Let's say, was it year 10 that we're going to hit in a minute?
Yes, I believe it was year 10, that or year 12, somewhere in there.
All right. All right. That's okay. So where were you? Let's talk about the year before the
Yeah.
fall. Where did you
So
land that year?
that was my best year to date, you know, to that point. And I ranked fifth in my region. So out of the open, I was the fifth best person in the entire East Coast region. Because at this point, the Northeast fused with Canada East. So it was a bigger region. Yeah,
Wow.
it kept getting bigger and bigger. So
So
we
the
had
northeast of the U.S. plus Canada, and you were in the
yes.
top 5.
And I was fifth. I think even fourth, but I was definitely the top 5 out of.
So you weren't in a parking lot by this point.
No, this is actually a stadium now with lights. Yeah, we got the. It evolved quite a bit from the parking
This
lot.
is all televised too, right?
Yes, yeah, the games is on ESPN, and you know the regionals was all videoed and streamed live, and I think that was on ESPN too. I'm not really sure where the hell regionals was, but I know everything was televised.
So this is big time. You said you mentioned earlier you're around all these genetic freaks. You got professional athletes, maybe coming in from other sports, maybe former Olympians. I don't know, but you got all these people
Probably.
popping out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, maybe this is something I can dominate." Right?
Yes.
Going up against the world's best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you came out of that year being in the top 5. You had to feel pretty good about yourself.
I felt great. Yeah, I felt like, you know, the year or two before that is when I became a lot smarter with programming, and this kind of corresponded with like me opening Perform Fuel, which is my nutrition coaching. Like the way that I was approaching training was changing significantly. I got much smarter with how I was training and what I was doing, and it, you know, when I took that top 5, I was like, fuck, finally, it's starting to show. Like this is, I feel good now. Like this is where I feel like I should be. You know,
That's interesting because your mental state was always here, wasn't it? And you just it was a matter of working your physical state up to that.
Yeah. My mental state was always top 5, but my body wasn't. But I didn't realize that, and I never wanted to.
How did you develop those mindsets?
I think a lot of it came from like my childhood. You know, I had a great childhood. My parents, you know, really sacrificed everything they could to allow me the flexibility to do what I wanted to do. And I think between that and, you know, my parents and childhood, people in my childhood always saying, hey, you're going to be great at something. You're going to be great at something. And then I was also in martial arts from when I was 4, and that kind of like factored in. In my head, there wasn't a possibility to not be great at something. Like if I wasn't the best at something, I failed. Like it was that fucking, it's clear as day to me. Like that was it. Like I wasn't going to ruin, you know, all these people like sacrifice to provide me the flexibility to do this. I was not going to accept some sort of failure or mediocrity. You know, like it just wasn't.
It sounds like you had a lot of pressure coming into this. The more you put into it, the more you.
Yeah, and it was all, you know, self-made. It was all
Self-manufactured. Interesting. So you came out of that year. You're in the top 5. Does that mean you went on to a national level or not?
Yes. So then the regionals followed. Now I was really excited to perform at regionals, except I actually had to pull out that year because of an ankle injury. They wouldn't let me. The first event had a little bit of running in it, and they wouldn't let me even do the event because, or they said that if I was injured or I couldn't do the event, I wasn't able to compete at all.
Okay.
So I came out of top 5 in the Open. I was really excited. If I did that at regionals, that's it. I'm at the games, which was my, you know, from the moment that I started all this, the games was the goal. And that hurt because now I couldn't compete at regionals and I was this close, you know. I still took it as a good thing knowing what I was capable of because I did all the regional events like in my gym and I know where I would have ranked. And it would have ranked, you know, had I done that in competition, I would have ranked really well, you know, probably top 5, which is exactly where I needed to be. So I felt really good with my ability and my capacity. And it burned like hell. Like the day I was at regionals, I was at the athlete check-in, you know, we were doing the whole thing and I couldn't do the competition. My ankle was just a little too fucked up. And if I went along with it, I probably would have broke it or had some sort of tendinopathy, which would have fucked me up for a while. So I had to pull out, which burned. I mean, I couldn't even to give you an example of how, you know, much that sucked. I was with my girlfriend and she was always supporting me through everything. And when we were there, this was in Albany. I'm pretty sure it was in Albany, the regional competition. I couldn't even be around Albany. I woke up the next day knowing I should be competing and I wasn't.
Right.
And it fucked me up. You know, like I couldn't be I was like, you need to, you know, find somewhere and we need to go. So we just drove to, I think somewhere in like Boston and found like some fucking weird town to stay in of like a bed and breakfast or some shit. Like I had to be completely out of the territory. I couldn't even look at the phone for the weekend because I knew people were competing. And once I saw people's results on workouts and I know that I would have beaten them, it just fucking drove me crazy. But, you know.
So you're not the type to watch your fellow competitors take it on.
No. No. Not unless I was beating them, then I could watch. But that's, you know, that was how I felt, you know.
So you got through it though. You got through that. You went back home. Now you've proven yourself at a very high level. And now it probably, I'm thinking you know absolutely next year you're not going to have this ankle injury. You're going to be back. You're going to go all the way. This is the year it's going to happen, right? So the next 12 months, I can just imagine you're working out 2-a-days, 3-a-days, giving it your all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that year like with all this expectation and hope and excitement?
You know what? It was, I think the best way to put it was the first time my mental state and my physical state aligned. It was the first time where I was like, yeah, I know I can do this, but my body was also like, yeah, dude, you can do this. Like, this was like the first time where everything clicked. And at the same time, like my training got even better, even more intelligent, like even more effort. My sleep was better, you know, everything and anything that I could do. I literally had a sauna installed in my house because of the endurance adaptations I could get after training from going, like everything you can possibly imagine I was doing. 24/7 was competing.
If you're not working out, you're doing something for your body. Sauna is great. I agree with that.
Love it.
Doing the sauna, or you're reading to figure out the next thing you can do.
Yes.
Every moment of this year is just you on this path, moving.
Absolutely. I mean,
next step.
I had, you know, to give you an idea, at this point, I'm eating like 5,000 to 7,000 calories a day. Like, thank God, you know, Lindsay, my girlfriend, is cooking like, you know, a truck of food every fucking day. I'm either like working out, eating, sleeping, or I was also at the time taking 40 supplements a day. I was literally taking about 40 pills a day with various different supplements and like fish oils and vitamins and all this crazy shit that was going to help as much as it could with performance. Like everything was locked in. Like there was, birthday parties going on. I wanted nothing to do with them, like even my girlfriend's birthday, like this crazy. Like we didn't even celebrate her birthday or my birthday until after like the competition season. Like everything was just like, this was,
that's hardcore.
Yeah, as obsessive, as you could possibly be. And every day I woke up thinking, what else can I do? Because this is not enough. Like that, every possible thing I could do, I did, and I didn't let anything or anybody, get in the way of that routine. I kind of shut everything out.
So you sacrificed family stuff, friends,
everything. Yeah.
Everything. This was the one focus. And all right.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Christmas, birthdays, like I was working out and training. Like there was never a time where it was like, oh, let me go enjoy this, or let me, nope.
Yeah. What was your mindset like when this is over, then I'll enjoy once I'm finished in the world?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. You know what? My mindset was, I I wanted to believe that once I made it, that I was going to be able to live. And by that, I meant like, once I made it there and I got it and I touched it, I was going to be able to finally move on. And not that I even wanted to move on because I enjoyed it, but I was going to be able to do normal things. Like people don't even realize I didn't even go away to school. Like even when it came to college, like I stayed home so I could train. Like I didn't go out and party so I could train. Like I was super obsessive with it. Like as obsessive as you could possibly be with something.
So
I put my whole identity on it.
Would you say there was a great imbalance going on here? Like looking back, should you have stopped and said, let me celebrate my girlfriend's life just for a couple hours?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe that would have been a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Like I always, it's funny because now looking back, it's like doing that would have not gotten in the way at all of training.
Right.
It was, it was like this lie that I was telling myself, but I had such tunnel vision that I couldn't see out of that. And one part of it was very refreshing. Like even though a lot of it was probably unhealthy in a lot of ways, there was something so powerful about it. Like when you have such a clear and, set purpose that you don't hesitate for a second to push anything out of the way. Like if I wouldn't even have anybody in my life if they were going to get in my way. Like it wasn't even like a thought. To me, it was like, hey, if somebody came up to me like, hey, if you don't hang out or do this with me, then we're done. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was that simple.
Yeah.
It was just done.
Eddie style cut out of my life.
Yeah. And it was completely unhealthy, but at the same time, it was something really, extraordinary to feel, how powerful that was.
So this is interesting to me because, as you know, the show has kind of started with centering on recovery from addictive substances. But these kind of stories are actually my favorite because it takes that mental dynamics that I personally use to obsess over getting high and escaping my reality.
Right.
And over here, you've got, damned if I can't say it's not the exact replica.
Exact same thing.
Obsessive pattern.
Yep.
Here.
My addiction was the sport. It was training. I shut everything out. It was the exact same thing, just in a different tool, or using a different drug, so to speak.
Which is interesting in and of itself because even though maybe on some level in the background, you're like, maybe I could have taken an hour for my girlfriend. At the same time, you're like, yeah, well, I'm improving my health. I'm working towards this big goal that's somehow going to shape who I become, who I am. It's going to complete me in a sense, right? Did you kind of feel that way? Like once I've got this achievement, then I'll
Yeah,
be able to, okay.
exactly. You know what? The other thing too, which is kind of so twisted, is that the because I was sacrificing and not spending time with my family or my girlfriend Lindsay or even other people that were really close to me or even friends, I also used that as motivation. It was like, if you're sacrificing all of this, you better fucking make it, right? It's like, if you sacrifice all of this and you don't make it, you fucked everything up. Like, you
It's a
not
lot
only,
of pressure, man.
it was it was a lot.
A lot of pressure.
And
Shout
that,
out to Lindsay, by the way.
yeah, yeah, you go, Liz. Love you, Liz.
We'll definitely be celebrating your birthday this year.
That's right. We'll make up for a few years, yeah.
Um, so let's go to the event itself, man, because this, like I told
Yeah.
you before we got on this call, I went online and searched your name, Devin, and I saw some crazy stuff, man, like animosity that really should never be, and probably wasn't so much before the internet age. But take me
Right.
through take me through what happened from your perspective, and I may stop and interrupt you a little bit, but I want to
Yeah.
hear how it felt going through it as it actually happened in real time.
Okay. So, like we talked, this was the year, right? Everything was in line. I was, doing some of the regional workouts, during the year, and I was crushing them. Everything felt great. So this all started with a change to the game's format. So I forgot what month it was, but they sent out like a huge email, and CrossFit for the first time in its like entire existence made a huge change to the sporting format.
Okay.
And basically what they announced was that they were getting rid of regionals. And that completely fucked me up, because this whole year I was leading up to perform at regionals. That's what I was training for. That was my ticket to get to the big show, which was the goal this whole time. And nobody really knew what to expect from that. And they were going to be putting out these, a few competitions rather than having like 10 different regionals. They were going to have very few competitions, a small handful, and you were going to have to win one of them in order to get to the games. So it changed everything. But what happened was they made one last little shift before the season. And they said that the top 20 in the world who did the open. So before this, the top 20 in each region were the ones that went to regionals. Now they made a shift where the top 20 in the world went right to the games.
Okay.
It's kind of like the, don't pass go kind of thing, just go right to it. And it was the first time they ever did this. And the only options now to get to the games were to be the top 20 in the open, or go to one of these very few competitions and win. Like, it couldn't be second or third, you had to be first.
Okay, so what did you do?
I went through the open.
Okay.
Because my best shot was going through the open, mainly because the events were different. So when you go to like these different competitions, there's a lot more running, swimming, things like that. When you do the open, it's all online based, so it's controlled in a gym. You have to be able to videotape everything.
Okay.
So you can't run, you can't swim. Those things are out.
Gotcha.
That was my ticket in, because I'm not good at that shit.
Okay, so no more parking lots, no more
Right.
no more swimming. You're gonna do this thing in front of a camera in
Yes.
your gym, right?
Yes.
And then you send the video in, and they compare that with everybody else.
Yep. And then they improve your score, so to speak, and then you're, whatever.
That had to be a letdown in and of itself, because now you're not going to the competition, which you did for the last 9 years, and
Right.
you probably had a degree of comfort there versus being on a video.
Yes. So at first I was panicking because, like I said, regionals was everything, right?
Right.
So I didn't know what the fuck to make of this the first few days that I saw it. Like, Lindsay came home one day and I was just sitting on the couch, like staring, like a zombie into my phone. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what this meant yet.
Yeah.
But after a little bit of thinking, I realized that this actually was a blessing, because the open, that online format is always where I've ranked better anyway.
Okay.
mainly because like I talked about, the events are different. Like I don't have to run or swim,
Right.
so I can rank really high. So I was like, wait a minute, like this is actually working for me rather than against me. Like this is my best possible shot
Nice.
ever to
Yeah.
get to the games. And I'm already feeling on top of the world, like leading up to this.
Yeah.
So then everything shifted and I was like, oh shit, like this is it. Like I can do it. Like I'm going to make it. And, obviously this was a big jump because top 20 in a region to top 20 in the world was
Yeah.
completely different. Now we're talking top 20 out of over 300,000 people all over the world, So this was a different animal. But I felt very confident, very confident. And I thought that this was by far my best shot possible. So while everybody else was starting to kind of get to these other competitions or train for these other competitions, I 100% focused on the open. From day one, I just laser focused in, took all of that fucking crazy training and obsessiveness and geared it all towards the type of workouts that would be in the open.
Okay.
And I felt very, very, very confident going into the open. And then everything started.
So, if I understand correctly, the day came, you recorded yourself doing these. Is it all one? Is it one recording, one shot?
You have so the open is or was 5 weeks long, and there's one event per week, and you have like a deadline. They released it on Thursday, and you had to have your score submitted by Monday, and you had to have the workouts videotaped. And you had to show like all your weights and the measurements. You had to go through the whole thing. But you also had to have a judge that was certified judge you through the workout and count your reps out loud. And
The judge was with you personally?
yes, that was actually in the gym. Now anybody could be your judge as long as they were, you had to do like a course online to make sure that they knew the standards or whatever. But you had to have somebody there in person, like judging you and making sure that you did all the reps right and the weights right and all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, you had to have it videotaped. And then what would happen is if you were one of the top ranked people, they would then request, either all one or a bunch of random different videos to prove that, or you had to prove that you got that score.
Gotcha.
So then they would have a whole team go through it and analyze it and make
Well,
sure.
hold on before you get there. So
Yeah.
you submit yours. What was the initial reaction or result?
Well, first, let me just say this: the open itself, like before I even got to the end of it, the 5 weeks of the open itself was the most stressful 5 weeks of my entire fucking life.
Right.
Because there was literally a point where I don't know how I survived those 5 weeks, to be completely fucking honest. Like the amount of different like nootropics and caffeine and shit that I was taking to like be able to function and perform while sleep deprived was crazy. There was one time where I was up for 4 days straight. Like I'm not exaggerating. I was literally up. I didn't sleep for 4 fucking days because of all the shit that I had in me and all the stress, and I couldn't like function and sleep. So I felt really good. The first week I was out of the top 20, but it's a matter of, the summary of the 5 workouts and where you rank. As the workouts went, the more and more I got closer to that top 20. And finally, the fourth of the, 4 weeks in, when I did that event is when I actually got into the top 20. I was like 18th or 17th. And then the 5th workout came, the last one, and I put the hammer down and I did really well in the event, and then I came in 15th. So I finished the open, the 5 weeks being 15th in the world. And you had to be the top 20. And
Hold up. I just wanted to hear you say that one more time.
Yeah. Nice. So I finished 15th in the world. Out of, I don't even know, 300 plus thousand, I believe. And you had to be top 20 in order to get to the games. This was the moment, right? Like this was like, holy shit. Like, every week that went by, I got closer and closer. Like the first week wasn't really my type of event, which I knew that was, first workout was always like that. But then the second one, I got closer. I was closing in. The third one, I was really fucking close. The fourth one, I finally passed the threshold of being in the top 20. Now I just need to put the stamp on it. You know, like the last workout was either going to be I fucked it up and I fell right out of the top 20,
Right.
or I did really well and I solidified my spot. And this was where I didn't sleep for like 4 days. And it got fucking crazy and wild, but I was doing the workouts like every day. Like, you know, most people would do the workouts once or repeat them twice in the, like those 4 or 5 days that you had. I was doing them like, there was one point I did them twice in a day. Like, it was just insane. I was doing it as many times as I possibly could to get the score.
So how do you score in that 5th one?
Really well. I believe it was, man, I want to say it was like.
Did you move up though, or did you?
Yes, I moved up. I think
you got into the top 20 and then you moved up, so you knew this was legit.
Yeah, so I ended the Open, you know, without everything being verified yet. The unofficial score was 15th in the world. And to me, I was like, holy shit. Like, I've, you know, to put this in perspective, like the whole Open thing and verifying videos, like you had to do that just to get to regionals all the other years. So I wasn't really stressed about like having to submit a video. That was normal. Like I did it every year. I never had a problem. So me getting to that 15th was like, oh shit, this is it. Like it's right. I can fucking touch it. You know what I mean? Like
on your way, you're buying the ticket, you're packing your bags.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to celebrate yet because I wanted to get that, you know, fucking invitation in my hands.
Right.
But this was it. Like it seemed like everything paid off. It seemed like, you know, it was all worth it. Not going away to school, not fucking partying, not spending the birthdays. Like, oh wow, it made sense now.
All that cost.
Yeah, it paid off. Like it was worth it, basically.
And then what happened?
And then everything fell apart.
What was the first thing that happened there?
So the first thing that happened was they asked for 2 different videos. So they sometimes would ask for random videos. You don't know which one's going to be. They obviously do that so you have a video for each of them and everything's legit. So they asked for 2 different ones, which was fine. That was normal. And then usually you have like a week to get them the videos. And you're actually allowed to redo the workouts if you want to. Doesn't have to be the video from the Open. Right. So sometimes
got to match up times and speeds and all that weight.
Yeah, like you know, sometimes if you look at your, you know, video and you're like, oh man, you know, I don't know if they'll count those reps. Let me redo it just in case. Okay. And you redo it to make sure it's perfect, right?
Okay, so you send in your 2 videos.
So, well, this is what happened. So I got that email asking for 2 videos, but I also got another email the next day. So this email came in Thursday. Hey, it was an automated email sent to the top 20 guys. Send these 2 videos in by Tuesday or whatever it was. Cool. So I was like, all right, let me start uploading those. The next day I got another email. This email was not an automated email. It was a personalized email from one of the staff at the CrossFit Games who was reviewing everything. And this email completely threw me off. He was asking for every single video, so all 5, and it was due by that day. So to put that in perspective, the email before was, hey, we need 2 videos by next Tuesday. The next day I got an email from somebody personally, like, hey, Devin, we need every single one of your videos, and we need it today, otherwise you're disqualified.
Right.
And I almost fucking shit myself because not only did that not make any sense to me because nobody else had that requirement. Everybody else only had 2 videos by Tuesday. Now I had to submit 5 by that day. The problem was I'm a huge night owl and I, you know, do all my work at night. I didn't see that email until it was already past that day. It was like Friday at like 1 a.m. and I finally looked at the email, and he said that if you didn't submit all of your videos by Friday, that day before midnight, I was
prior to reading it.
And I'm just reading it. I was like, holy shit. Like one of the videos I didn't even have. I would have.
They should have called you, right?
They should have done something. So I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I emailed them back like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like everybody else has a week. For 2 videos, I have like 3 days for 5. What the hell is going on? I didn't even have one of the videos. So that whole weekend I spent trying to redo that one workout I didn't have a video for. So I wasn't even looking at the other 4. And I sent him everything I had. they didn't get back to me until Monday night. So the whole like 3 days, I was just panicked and tortured and thought maybe I was disqualified.
Yeah.
Finally got back to me, and it was something so silly. It was basically that my email address was not the one they had on record. So yeah. So they thought that, I don't know what the fuck they thought, that maybe somebody else was trying to give
Everything
videos
was
for me.
okay then?
So everything was fine. Yeah, he was like, never mind, like we're good. But here's how he ended the email, which kind of didn't make sense. He was like, but we would still like to have all of your videos. I was like, what? I mean, that's still kind of unfair, but whatever. I was like, you know what? I'm relieved, because for a second I thought I was disqualified,
Gotcha.
So I was relieved that I was like, all right, fine, like take all these videos. I'm glad I still have a shot. This is good.
Right.
So then he took the videos. I didn't hear back from him for a few weeks. And this is where, shit hit the fan. He emails me back and he says, hey, we reviewed all your videos. Everything was fine except for one of the workouts. And it was the third workout. And, there was a movement, handstand push-ups in the workout, which is my best movement of the sport. And you were supposed to do 50 of them. I only did 40. And he's like, you missed 10 reps on this. We have to, give you a huge penalty or, take away the score or whatever. I was like, there's no way. I was literally driving as I was like reading this email. I was waiting for an email from him, right? So I finally got the email. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm in. You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, no, there's a huge penalty here. And I was like, no way. So I like pulled over and I was reading the fucking email. Like, this dude must have watched too many videos. There's no way I missed 10 reps, right? So I looked back at the video and I did. I was like, fuck. So what I did was, as soon as I saw this, I emailed him my other attempt, because I did this numerous times and I had videos for all.
Yep.
I sent him my other attempt, which was legit. All the reps were there. It was only like, I think it was like 10 seconds slower. It didn't make a difference in ranking. Like in that workout, I still would have been 15th overall. It wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay.
So I sent him that video. He saw the video and he was like, okay, yeah, we approve this video, except it's too late. We can't accept it. I was like, wait a second. I was like, you required 5 workouts from me in 2 days, where everybody else had to submit 2 in a week. And I was like, you can't take another video from me. Like what people didn't realize is, because this guy wanted 5 workouts in a day, and I didn't even have one of them. I didn't even take the time to look at any of the workouts. All I did was submit what I had.
Yeah.
And I tried to redo that last workout. So I never even took the time to look at it. And I had plenty of other attempts in that workout that I could have just given him the video for. I mean, I did it legitimately in the time. But that just wasn't the video that I gave him. The other one was already uploaded to YouTube. It was there. All he had to do was just, look at it. So what happened was, he decided to give me a major penalty instead of invalidating the score, because the circumstances were ridiculous.
Okay.
So I was like, fine. I did the math myself. And looking at the leaderboard, I would have tied with the last qualifying spot to get to the games.
Okay.
So if all stays the same, I still make it. Fast forward like a week, and we wrapped all this up and we were good, and me and the sport were good. We figured it out. I got the penalty, whatever. So this is old news to me at this point. A week later, the leaderboard is finalized, and I'm tied for the last place, which means to qualify.
So their math
we
was,
both
their
go.
math matched yours. Okay, cool. So everybody goes.
Everybody goes. The next day, I wake up and I have hundreds of notifications on my phone from some of the top guys in the sport. So there's guys like Patrick Vellner and Brent Fikowski were the big ones. They took 2nd and 3rd in the world the last few years. They have millions of followers on Instagram, like super popular CrossFit athletes, whatever. And I have notifications from them about comments from them on my posts. And I was like, that's fucking weird. I just got on social media last week.
Right. Yeah. You hadn't been using social media the previous year.
Nothing. Yeah. I hated social media. So I haven't even been using it. I just got on it the week before this. Right. So now I'm seeing all these like notifications. I was like, I'm like, what the fuck? You know, at first I thought it was a good thing. I was like, oh shit, look at me. You know, maybe I'm getting out there. You know?
Yeah, they're congratulating you.
Yeah. No. So I look at the comments, and I have no idea how this is happening and where this is coming from, but I'm getting immense hate. People are saying, you know, nice fucking reps, you cheater. How the fuck, you better decline your invitation. You don't belong at the games. You're a piece of shit. You're this, you're that. From the top guys in the sport. These are guys that I looked up to for the last fucking 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, these are the guys that I was trying to be with, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm getting these huge, and they don't even know me, and I'm getting huge hate from these guys, and I had no fucking idea what was going on. You know, one guy said something about like my box step ups and my handstand push ups. So I was like, this has to be about the workout of the open, but I didn't understand. All of my videos were like privately linked. Only me and who I gave the link to could see them. So the games or whatever. So I didn't know what was going on until somebody sent me a link to a CrossFit Games article that showed all of the changes in scoring from the open. And there was like 10 of us listed, and I was one of them. And all it said about me was he missed 10 reps, so he got a major penalty. And it shifted his ranking from this to that. But I still qualified for the game spot. Meanwhile, there was other people, plenty of people who were like top 20 in the world who got pushed to like 200th because they had huge penalties on multiple workouts. I only had it on one. But for some reason,
at this point, you're still going.
Yes, it's still this point. I'm still in. I'm just really confused. So, and this is where it started to evolve, right? So, for some reason, I still don't understand why everybody came after me. They ignored the other 9 people who got, you know, huge issues with their movements or whatever, and they came after me. And because the top guys, you know, the online shit is it's a very mob-like mentality, right? And once the top guys in the sport with millions of followers came after me publicly, everybody came after me publicly. That's what started the whole shit show. Once they came after me and started saying shit like, you're a cheater, you're a scumbag, you're, you know, a piece of shit, you don't belong here, your reps suck, all this kind of stuff.
Bandwagon.
Everybody did. Thousands of people. I mean, there was nonstop like memes about me and like fucking random posts with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, thousands of comments. I was getting death threats every day.
Wait a minute. Thinking back over the last 10 years, you must have built up a pretty good following of positivity. People from your town, your family, your friends are all pretty proud of you coming up to this point, right?
That's what I thought. Most of the people who were local to me, people that I've, you know, worked out with in the past, trained with, people who were my best friends at some point, almost all of them jumped on the bandwagon. I saw comments from all of them on like, yeah, he's a piece of shit, or this is bullshit. He shouldn't be allowed to go to the games. I was like, dude, you live 5 minutes from my house. Like, you know who I am, and you're going to take to social media and pretend like you don't know me just to, like, you know, be part of the crowd, just to feel like you're, you know, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, obviously my family had my back, and I had, you know, a good team of people who supported me, mainly the people that I was coaching, like in Performance Fuel, that all kind of sent me messages and texts. I was like, dude, this is crazy. Fuck them, you know. Problem was, though, that most people, you know, everybody publicly was against me. I was getting text personally, sure, but hardly anybody. There was very few people. Like one of my friends, Mike Vespa, was one of them who was actually getting out there publicly and like commenting to people's comments. But most people didn't want to do that. So they felt afraid, I guess, you know, like, and I don't think people realize how much that shit matters. You know, like when all these people who don't know me or who do know me and are just being assholes and trying to, like, you know, get part of the fame from all this and feel like they're important or something, started going after me. there was very, very, very few people saying anything positive about me publicly. Everybody was like too afraid. Like they didn't want to get caught in the fire, so to speak.
Yeah,
They didn't
sure.
want to go up against the best guys in the sport who were saying whatever they were saying. And that was, an awful feeling, like I, here I was a decade in the making for this, right? Like this was everything that I wanted. This was the community that I was a part of since the birth of the fucking community. Like I was one of the people who started this shit. I was here from the very beginning, every year. I opened up a gym, which I've now had for 8 to 10 years. I've been a part of that community for so long, and I've done nothing but good for the community. And I put everything, my whole soul into it. And finally, when I've made it, when I've gotten that invitation, it just all fucking crumbled. It was like I finally grabbed that invitation and I just went up in flames. Like everything went up in flames. People that I used to know were saying I was a piece of shit, getting constant death threats about, I should fucking kill myself and you're a piece of shit and, you should, I mean, the worst thing you could possibly imagine.
Did you listen to those people?
It was hard not to. I was not used to social media in general, so I wasn't even. I didn't even. The biggest thing was I couldn't escape it. The weird thing is before I'm almost ashamed to say this, but before I went through all of this, I always thought this whole online bullying thing was bullshit. I thought there was like, oh, come on. Like, if I got bullied in school, like we fought, I would get punched in the face and they would get punched in the face and that was it, like that's real bullying. Like you're talking about somebody saying something to you online, like I thought it was silly, but wow. Like I have never experienced such intense hate. And the thing that people don't realize about when things go viral like that in social media is that you can't escape. I remember, literally being alone in my basement. Like I found like the darkest corner of my basement and I just sat there and in the corner and I was trying to like hide. I was trying to feel separated from everything and I couldn't shake it because no matter what I was doing, no matter where I was, no matter how far away I was physically, they were still commenting, still bashing me. They were still, liking the comments that hated mine. They were still hating on me and sending me death threats. And
let me ask you this. All right, so you're going through all this, and I'm certainly not minimizing it. I can't imagine what that must have been like to have the thing that you worked for a decade turn on you like that. But so did you ultimately not go to this game?
Yes. So I made the decision that through not only because of all of this, my biggest fear was this, seeing what I did, who I became, so to speak, getting to the games. My bigger fear was what happens when I got to the games, right? Like all of this, everything that I've done up until this point, all that I've sacrificed, all the unhealthy bullshit, the fire that I went through, all of this was to get to the games because that was the goal. That was the end mark, right? But if I got to the games and I competed at the games and now, it's a different event, it's a little bit different and it's a different thing to train for. And if I did like mid-pack there, then I know what I would have done. That same addictive, wanting to be great personality would now say, okay, now you need to win the games. And it all would have started over again. So
in a sense, having all that negative action come against you helped you see the problem.
It not only helped me see the problem, but it allowed me to finally pull away. Because if none of that would have happened, I would have went to the games and I would have probably done okay. And I wouldn't have won, just knowing the events and stuff, but I would have done good, decent for being there for the first time. But I would have went back home after coming from the games, and the whole cycle would have started over. Now it's not about getting to the games. Now it's about being top 3 or top 5 at the games. And, the next decade of my life would have been gone because I would have been chasing this new goal, which probably would have been even more severe.
Sure.
And that was the one thing that everybody else saw. The people who were close to me saw how obsessive I was and saw how unhealthy it was and saw that this was going to end probably in a bad way. But I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all. I saw this is who I am. Like if I don't do this, I might as well be dead, And when all of this bullshit happened, it finally forced me to look myself in the face and really analyze what was important and who was important and how much time, I don't want to say that I've wasted because I don't regret doing any of it, but looking back at those last 12 years of my life was so restrictive in so many ways. It was like a mental imprisonment in some sort, where it was like I was so tunnel visioned that I couldn't see outside of it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't spend time with my family. Now, my parents are 10 years older than they were. It was like I popped my head out of the water for the first time in like 12 years,
Yeah.
And it was
you look up and they're old.
yeah, it was like, when the fuck did this happen? Like, holy shit. Like, it was really intense and very confusing and a very real slap in the face for so many different reasons. And so when I finally got the invitation, I did get it. They still sent it to me. The sport had my back. They actually stuck up for me at some points too. And I finally got that invitation, and to decline, man, to have that invitation in my hand, which is what I was waiting for 12 years, and to hit decline was, yeah, it was really fucking hard, to say the least, but also very liberating because I felt like when I hit that decline, it wasn't just, hitting decline across the games. It was taking the weight that's been on my shoulders for the last 12 years and letting it go. And there were so many mixed feelings. It was like, wait a minute, but does that now mean the last 10 years of your life was a waste because you're just kind of throwing it away? And it was that, but the plus on the other side, it was like, well, now you're free. Like you can finally live. And it was like so confusing, but I made the best moment I could in the best decision I could right then and there. And looking back, I don't regret it at all. It was definitely what I needed to do, because if it wasn't for that, nothing that followed would have happened.
So what followed?
Yeah, so a lot. So eventually I got my shit back together and I started kind of getting back into it.
Well, hold on now. When you say get back into it, I want to get a little more clarity on that. But just to go back for a second, so you walked away in some regards was the pinnacle, the crowning moment for what you'd worked for 12 years. You walked away. You realized that goal was hollow in some sense.
Yeah.
That all the things that should have been your focus hadn't been your focus, and you took your life back.
Yeah.
In a very large sense, because an obsession had been running your life. And I guess, if we're going to stick to the theme of this show, that was the beginning of your recovery, hitting that decline button, wasn't it? So, it's great on coming from our side, like in terms of addicts and alcoholics, like when we stop drinking or using drugs, a lot of people assume that's when we start, that's when life just gets to be roses and everything's great. You know, like when I came home from prison, I actually had thought, I'm like, wow, I escaped. I'm good now. Like everything's just going to be,
Mm,
riding off into the sunset. But that's when
right.
life begins, when
Ah,
the obsession is removed, and then you're able to
right.
look at that human being that took you to that shitty place.
Yeah.
Now you got a real job ahead of you trying to repair all that damage and
Yes.
untie all these knots in your brain. So,
And
yeah,
actually
man.
meet yourself for the first time, you know, like
Ooh.
which was for me was scary, itself. It's like, wait, who the fuck am I? Because the last 10 years has been this, you
Right,
know.
right. Yeah, this is
Um,
my identity.
yeah,
Now it's not.
no, yeah.
Now we're going to run short on time. What I want to do is I want to find out with a couple razor questions where you're at today, and I want to get maybe the top two or three revelations or transition points you were able to make over that. I realize we're going to have to compress, unfortunately, some of that, but I want
Yeah.
to I want to get your extraction on some of that transition from and also for the reader for the listeners. What date was that you hit that decline button? Do you recall roughly?
I don't remember actually. It was about a year ago though.
Okay, so a year ago is when you began your recovery in a sense. All
Yes.
right. So what's it been like last year?
So I think the biggest thing that happened since then, and the most powerful thing that's happened is, um, not only have I made a lot of relationships from this, I've connected with a lot of people who've kind of gone through something similar, which added a lot. But what really happened was after all this happened, I kind of, like I said, I had to kind of meet myself for the first time. I wanted to go right back to it. I'm sure you know what that's like, but it was like as soon as all the bullshit cleared and the fire kind of got put out, I wanted to go right back in the gym and do it all over again because that's all I knew. You know what I mean? It was like let me go back, but I was like, wait, like what the fuck am I doing? And so the one thing that really hit me hard was a lot of people, myself included, obviously. We all want to be, or a lot of people who compete, especially in sports, they want to be good at something. They want to be great, right? They want to perform really well. But you're going up against people who are genetic freaks. They're born with something you don't have. And that always bothered the shit out of me because it was like, I could put all this time and effort into something and this guy can still beat me simply because his parents were different from mine, and that bothered the shit out of me. And what I realized was looking back at all this 10 years and whatnot, it was me trying to prove that I could do it anyway. And so what I did was I actually dived really hard into genomics. And I found the best guys, the best scientists and doctors in the world who have their hands on all of this. And I partnered with them and I started getting really deep into nutrigenomics and sports genomics and analyzing people's actual genomes to help interpret them where their best chances are, because there's two things that happen to most champions. Number one, they're born lucky because they have the right parents. Number two, they're lucky enough to find the right sport, because just because you have the genes to be good in like football, let's say, doesn't mean you didn't, get into baseball. Like what happens if
Sure.
there could be plenty of people who tried for baseball who would have been world champion golfers or something. Like you don't know where you were supposed to be, right? So looking at your genome and kind of analyzing at the cellular level where you're best designed to be can give people that chance to be successful that they may not have otherwise had, and a leg up, so to speak, on the people who kind of came into this world naturally gifted. So a lot of my time and research kind of went into genomics and helping people understand their bodies and actually who they are at the cellular level. Which is what also helped me understand who I was and why I did all of the things that I did and why, I clung to CrossFit and things like that. So long story short, now I'm actually not nearly as obsessively. I've gotten into strongman because, for basically all of CrossFit, I was going against who I was naturally. Like I was going against what my body was designed to do. And so now I'm doing what my body's actually designed to do. And I'm not allowing, to skip birthdays or skip family time or anything like that. And now I have an entirely different business about it. I've helped people in ways that I never thought I'd be able to help them before. And I'm giving people a chance that they may have not otherwise had. That's kind of how I I view it.
Maybe chiefly among those people is yourself.
Yes, mainly myself. You know, and that's you know, it was a very harsh lesson to be learned, and you know, the one thing that happened to me just recently is it was my 30th birthday, and my girlfriend put on this whole, like, she sent me on this whole like scavenger hunt thing, right? And it ended with like a big surprise party. And when I walked into that room and I saw all of these people, you know, my family, friends, people I haven't talked to in a decade, it honestly, like, it broke me down. Like, I wanted to cry my eyes out like a 4-year-old. I kept my shit together in public. But what I was seeing was everything that I sacrificed was still there.
Right.
You know, like, it was like I thought all of this was gone. Like, I thought I burned all of these bridges. I thought that, you know, I couldn't possibly get back what I lost. And seeing all of that right there in front of me was like, holy shit. You know, and it
I
gave
saw
me a
the
little bit
video.
of, yeah, did you see
I
that?
saw the video. Yeah, it's quite a surprise party. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it was, you know, in that moment, everything kind of started to make a little bit more sense. You know, I realized that, hey, the last 10 years wasn't a waste of time. Like, you went through this for a purpose, and now you came out of it with a completely different perspective that you can help people with, and you know, you still have those people in your life, and now you realize how important they are, which
You
is
know, Devin, in a very real sense, you're incredibly lucky, as we both are, because you know a lot of people, I think, have the same experience with you in business or with their careers.
you
But
know,
unfortunately, a career takes place over 40 years in a lot of cases.
right.
And when people don't wake up until they retire, they look around and half the people that were in their lives are dead.
Yeah.
Children have completely grown up and moved on and hold resentments, deep resentments towards them for how they were for their entire childhood.
Right.
There's not a lot of recovery to be had in some of those situations. And
No.
so, kind of like my situation and not being away for 30 years and only being away for 6, there's a lot of gratitude, man. It's the awareness that you're pretty lucky, I think, in this situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that was the hardest thing to see for a while, you know, for
You
sure.
know, all those people that you're doing this stuff for, in a sense, didn't turn out to be people that, were going to be reliable. And
Right.
that's a painful lesson, man. Because I remember thinking I had all these friends, and then when I went to prison, it was
Yes.
like, who's coming to visit? Who's bringing me food? Who's bringing me money? Nobody was.
That's incredible. That's
It's
wow.
one of those deafening silences. And I think yours was way worse because there was no silence. You had plenty of voices.
Well, you know what? That's I can't even imagine like how you dealt with everything, but I do know what that's like. It's kind of like expecting, you know, I kept hoping people were gonna be there. You know, people were gonna stick up and say something. I helped this guy for so much. Like, he should say something. You know,
Right.
nothing, and nothing happened. And I was like, holy shit! Like, well, it teaches you a lot, you know. But the people who do come, or the people that were there, you know, I realized were the ones that I need to keep around, you know, and not miss their birthdays.
What would you say to anybody who's listening to this and heard your story now and is either going through something where, they're being attacked, or maybe they're doing something obsessively and they know they need to stop deep down? What would you say to that person?
Man, I would say first, if you're going through something right now, I know you're not alone. You know, me and you can vouch for that. And I know how awful it is, and I know how dark it can get, and I know the thoughts that are probably going through your head, but that will, at some point, you can't see it now, but at some point that will be what defines you, and that will probably have been the best thing that could have happened to you. as long as you have that perspective. And that's such a hard thing to hear while you're going through it, I know. But hold on to that, and I can swear it's going to be the truth, in time. And shit, if you're going through something obsessive like I was, man, I get it. First thing I would say to that person is I understand, I don't judge you like everybody else is probably judging you. I get it. But I would definitely listen to that voice inside of you that's kind of confused as to why you're doing it and that has a little bit of doubt. It's definitely worth listening to. And I completely get it if you need to see it through, but just know that if you see it through and you go all the way down that rabbit hole, what's waiting for you may not be what you think. It's probably not going to be the way you thought it was.
Oh man, that's deep wisdom. That's deep wisdom. You're a smart guy, man. It seems like you got a lot of great things going for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
I'm really
it.
glad you pulled through this.
Yeah, me too.
Any
Gee.
chance you'll go back and do another CrossFit in the future?
Probably not. Nope.
I know you're working on Ironman now, and you got something coming up. Will you just tell me what that is briefly?
Yeah, so I'm working on the strongman shit, which is, basically way more aligned with who I am and what my body's capable of. And it's much less, volume, much less crazy shit. It's still, a sport. It's still something I could do really well in, but it's what I'm designed to do. And it's something that I enjoy, and it's something that doesn't take me away from all of the lessons that I've learned,
Is there any sort of event or activity that's coming up that we can watch you in and cheer you on?
Next November will be the World's Strongest Man competition, which I would be competing in the 90 kilogram division. And the goal is to be the strongest man in the world in 90 kilograms. So,
nice. Yeah, if you're not watching the YouTube version of this podcast, just know that Devin is a big man. I saw some of your pictures online. He's wearing a white sweatshirt, but he looks kind of like Popeye hidden underneath the sweatshirt.
Take that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the spinach.
Exactly.
You are a recovery author, Devin, and it's been an honor interviewing you. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
First, thank you for having me, because this was a lot of fun, and it's also really helpful for me. But first, if you want to find me on like Instagram, at Devin M Ford is my handle, and then Devin Ford on Facebook. You'll see me. I'm probably the only Devin Ford without a shirt, because I think most Devin are women. So you'll find me. And then performerfuelnutrition.com is the company that I was referring to if you wanted more, info on what the hell it is that I do. And that's it, man. But if any of you are out there going through anything, God, please find me on social media. I'll have your back. I'll be one of the few that actually gets out there and has your back publicly. So
Take it from a man who knows.
Exactly.
Devin, again, man, thanks so much. Appreciate your generosity and your time, your commitment to honesty, and your willingness to share your struggle with us here at the Recovery Audience. Have a great weekend, and we'll be
Thank you. Thanks, man. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening to Recovery Authors. This is your host, Jesse Moskal. Oh.